Hi everyone, this is Rick Chapman and I'll be working with you to assemble our LOC Graduator Rocket in preparation for the Central New York Rocket Challenge being held in early June at Syracuse University's South Campus. Before we get started with assembly, let's take a moment to see what these little rockets can do. We've seen what the LOC Graduator Rocket can do. We're going to focus on the most.org page. That's most.org. Once we reach the page, we want to scroll across the top till we reach the Educators tab. We'll click on that tab and that'll bring us to a page that shows the many different engineering challenges that the most provide Central New York students. We'll click on the Central New York Rocket Challenge tab and that'll bring us to a page that provides all sorts of different resources for teams as they prepare for the Central New York Rocket Challenge. We're going to click on the assembly guide, and we'll use the assembly guide with this video series to help us assemble the rockets. This video series is actually based on the assembly guide. The only difference is we go out of order so we can have our sub-teams working at the same time, which will allow us to complete our rockets in around 3 meetings. Where if we went from the first page to the last page, it would take approximately 5 meetings to complete our rocket. The assembly guide has everything you need to know, from how to complete your payload compartment to your motor mounts to fin assemblies, recovery systems. Like I said, everything you could possibly want to know is in this guide. So if you have any questions or you want to double check something from this video, please refer to this assembly guide.
The first step to building the rocket is to check your parts list. Let's take some time and go through our parts list and talk about what each part does.
Here's an image of all the parts necessary to complete the assembly of our rocket. Let's start with the body tube, also known as the airframe. The body tube is the largest of the white tubes included in our kit, and it has slits at the bottom of the tube to allow the fins to slide in place. The fins are made of wood in this kit, and they will keep our rocket stable in flight, and they will also hold the motor mount in place, which is extremely important during our launch. Above the body tube, we have the nose cone, which is plastic in our kit, and it allows our rocket to be aerodynamic in flight, and it also acts as the top part of our payload compartment. To the left of the nose cone is our payload section, and that's the section that will carry our externaut and our altimeter during the launch. And one of the tasks that teams will have is to come up with a structure inside of that tube to keep everything safe. So I've seen students use newspaper, egg cartons, bubble wrap, all sorts of different materials, and that will truly be up to the teams to figure out what that structure is going to be like. To the left of the payload compartment, we have our coupler, and our coupler allows us to attach 2 tubes together, connect the tubes. In this case, it's going to connect our payload compartment to the top of the body tube. And to the left of the coupler is a wooden disc. That's the bulkhead, and underneath that is an eye bolt. We will eventually be screwing the eye bolt into the wooden disc, the bulkhead, and then sliding the bulkhead and the eye bolt into the very bottom of the coupler. That will complete our payload compartment, and we'll glue those in place, making sure they're secured so they won't separate during the launch and recovery phase of our launch. Underneath the main body tube is a parachute. We will use an 18-inch parachute that will allow our rocket to return back to the ground safely, while at the same time help eliminate some of the drift a larger parachute could cause. If there's a slight breeze and we use a large parachute, that could cause the rocket to drift quite a distance. To the right of the parachute, you'll see a small white tube, and 2 rings. That's the motor mount assembly. We'll be putting those together and then sliding those into the bottom of the main airframe or the main body tube. And then to the right of the motor mount assembly, you'll see it's a elastic strap. That's your shock cord all wound up, and underneath that you'll see a shock cord mount. Those will be used to connect the main body tube to the payload compartment, and it will also hook both of those to the parachute. And then once again, to the right of your shock cord and your shock cord mount assembly, those are the fins. And we've talked about those briefly earlier in this discussion, and we'll cover them more as we go through the assembly process.